I'm Myriam.
And I'm Elyse. Two friends bound by the love of books.
Taking on the world one chapter at a time. This is the Book Bound Besties podcast. Hey, Book Bound Besties! Welcome to season 3 of the Book Bound Besties podcast, where we dive deep into your favorite books, have unhinged chats, and Elyse theorizes about what's to come because she has not read the whole book yet. Today, we are starting from Blood and Ash, and I'm so excited because I have been telling Elyse I wanted to do this book since January?
Yeah. Basically, when we were starting the podcast, you already knew this was the next book you wanted to do.
Yeah, I just think it's such a fun book. The world is so interesting, and it's darker, it's spicier, I can't think of any other way. It's just so fun. It has a great, strong female main character. The love story is awesome. There is no miscommunication.
I like that.
And yeah, honestly, when I first picked up From Blood and Ash over the Christmas break, I devoured it in like 2 days. And I went right away to look to see if there were any podcasts that talked about it, because that's what I do when I like a book, is I just
need more content.
Exactly. And there wasn't. So there's a lot of podcasts out there that cover it in maybe 1 or 2 episodes, and they just do the broad strokes, but nobody deep dives it like we're going to be doing. So I'm excited.
Yeah.
If you want more Book Bound Besties content, be sure to follow along on TikTok and Instagram, because that's where we post funny clips from our episodes, silly videos, and unhinged book reviews, which I have not done in a while. I think I owe us an unhinged book review. Mm-hmm. I think it's just my thoughts on the books I've been reading lately
aren't as positive as usual.
Yeah. So maybe I'm just holding back a little. Send me good vibes, besties, that I read something that's worth an unhinged book review. Yeah. Also, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, even if you listen on another platform. This is what really helps us get pushed through the algorithm, and it allows more people to be exposed to our show, and that we can bring more besties into this community, which is all we want to do. We are seeing some fun growth over the last few weeks on the pod, which is amazing news. And we're really hoping that this new season is going to help push us even further. And we're getting awesome messages from you guys that really put a smile on our face and really keep us motivated to keep going and keep producing content and spending all the time that it takes to bring our reels and our episodes and our bonus episodes and all the silly things that we do.
Yeah. And I mean, it's from people all over the world too, which is something that I don't know about you, but I didn't really consider. Like, I know the internet is worldwide, but putting ourselves out there, I didn't think we'd be getting messages from people all across the world, and that's really cool. And
absolutely.
We appreciate you all. So
very true. This is your content warning. We will have a content warning for every single episode of this book, okay? This book, there is absolutely nothing PG about it. So take that for what it's worth.
Before we jump into it, I finished Air of Fire.
This we need to discuss.
Yeah.
We do. It is a necessity, a requirement.
I've already jumped into Queen of Shadows, so my brain is a little bit confused as to what happens in which book. Yeah. But I really loved it. It was definitely the best one so far. I mean, I know everyone keeps saying like, oh, they just get better and better, but like, absolutely. I think in Air of Fire, we just open up the world so much more. We have so many different storylines going on, but not in a way that you're confused. Like, they're all easy to follow. And when you jump from character to character, you still know what's going on, which is nice, because sometimes that's not the case in fantasy books. Sometimes it gets really convoluted. I love the new characters. I actually adore the new characters. And the growth of the old characters is really fun. Yeah, it's just really good.
I compare Air of Fire and the journey that Aelin Celaena goes through to the emotional arc of Nesta in A Court of Silver Flames. Would you agree?
I thought about that a lot reading it, and I see why you're saying it, but I feel it's just a very different approach, because I think through Nesta's eyes, you really get that emotional side and the depth and reason behind the emotion a lot more than you do with Celaena.
Really? You don't find that at the end when she's fighting the Vogue?
Yeah, a bit. Like, I'm not saying it's not the same.
And she dives deep into the deepest part of her trauma. and she confronts Marion's sacrifice, because that's really, out of all of the terrible things that happened to her, that's kind of the element of guilt that is
what propels it.
Yeah, it's like what's festering in her.
I actually loved that chunk. Like getting to see that history was really cool, and seeing the night where it all happened and everything. I thought maybe we'd get that in like Assassin's Blade, but we didn't, you know? So it was nice to visit that part of her.
Well, because in Assassin's Blade, we didn't know who she was. Her identity was still...
Well, I guess because it's a pre...
Yeah, we
where
didn't know
I
she was
read it,
alien.
we knew.
Yes, but like where she was in the story, she had rejected her identity as alien.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah. What do you think of the nickname Fireheart?
I like it.
I love it so much. And I love that there's the emoji on iPhone. I don't know if you've seen it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I never related the two, but yes.
Oh my goodness. For me, I just push that emoji button all the time. Fireheart. And I love that Rowan calls her that without knowing that her mom called her that too. So cute. Anyway.
Yeah, I really love Rowan. And I think I was telling you a bit. I like that they have like found each other in the sense that they've both gone through a loss and trauma and are kind of helping each other through it. And I really like that mutual relationship. So.
He starts off saying some...
Oh, he's so mean at first.
nasty things.
Yeah. I think I texted you. I was like, Rowan's so mean to her. Like, what the hell?
Yeah. Anyway.
But anyway.
They work through it. You went to Comic-Con.
I did go to Comic-Con.
Talk to us about it. Your cosplays were amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, I went 2 out of the 3 days. And the first day I went with friends and we all dressed up as characters from ACOTAR. So I was Nesta. And going into it, honestly, I was like, if one person recognizes who we are today, I'm going to be so happy. Because yes, we as a collective kind of have an idea of what these characters look like, but there's no like concrete look for them. Like there's not a recognizable, like I watched the movie and this is what they look like and I'll recognize them. And we're just like a bunch of people wearing funny ears and costumes, you know? But so many women, honestly, the look on their faces when they saw us from across the room, their faces would light up and they're like, oh my God, I love the book so much. I love ACOTAR. You guys look so cool. And like taking pictures with them and everything. And then I got to like nerd out about the books with strangers, which obviously is something we like doing.
Absolutely.
Considering all of this. So yeah, it was honestly so heartwarming. I was really, really happy.
You should have dressed up as Violet and then just given out, we could have printed out the Book Bound Besties.
Yeah. And then the second day I was dressed as Poison Ivy from the 90s version of the movie. And that was really fun too. I worked really hard on that costume. So
yeah, it looked very intricate.
It was very intricate. It was, yeah. So it was fun. It was great. I got a lot of fun photos. I met a lot of cool people and I got to hang out with my nerd friends. So.
And then Sunday we hung out with some of our friends from the friend group that
we always talk about.
Yeah, like the friend group that our friendship is born from.
Yeah.
And yeah, one of our friends is getting married in September, so we had our bridal shower. And we got to talk with, it's really funny because all of those girls, they're like, oh, we feel like we've seen you so recently, or like we talked to you so recently. We hadn't seen them since Super Bowl because we've been so busy and they all have kids and it's just been crazy. And usually we see a lot more of each other in the summertime. And they're like, oh, but we feel like we just spoke to you or that we talk to you all the time. And it's because they're the best friends and they support us and they listen to every episode and, you know, engage with our content and all that kind of thing. So yeah, it was just nice to actually speak with them. Yeah. But then also kind of nerd out about what we have said on the podcast and stuff. Like they all have so many opinions that they love to share and give us feedback.
Yeah. It was great.
They're our biggest fans. They're the best.
I know. It was awesome.
Yeah. So, besties. Like we said in our intro episode, we're doing things a little bit differently this season. So we're going to start off with some world building topics because we're going to be transparent. We're recording this episode 1 week after we said we would because Elyse started reading chapter 1 and was like, oh no, I don't understand anything.
It's true. I found it really overwhelming. Well, partially because we're changing paces now. We're entering a whole new world. But the way it's written isn't easy to follow. And like,
it's data dumpy.
But in a weird way. Okay. Because she'll use words and not provide context, but then the context comes later. So you're jumping around trying to figure out what things are. We still don't fully understand what the maiden is. So she talks about things and explains them, but then she talks about things and doesn't explain them. And you're trying to figure out and piece together this world. And I don't find it easy to follow in terms of world building. And I'm hoping over the next couple chapters, it'll get easier.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, I read the first chapter and my brain was like, oh no. So yeah, we took a week break.
Yeah. But one of the things that I actually like about this method of world building is that you are constantly building on the knowledge that you're given. For example, we're talking about the Ascended. And we know right now that they're the nobility. We know that there's a process that they go through called an ascension that, you know, then they become the Ascended. We really don't know much else about them. But what's going to happen is as we read the book, we're going to build on what we know about the Ascended. And it's going to be the same thing with all of the, you know, we know about Wolven. We know that they are part beast, part man, but actually both.
But it's like a sentence.
Exactly. But we're going to keep building on it as we keep going.
But maybe what I didn't like is there were so many one sentence things without context that it's like, okay, you've given me a whole new vocabulary with no definition for anything.
Yeah.
So I think that's what I found overwhelming.
Yeah, I get that.
Because in chapter 4, when we actually, and I know I'm jumping ahead, but just in terms of context and understanding, when we learn about the Craven, I thought that was really well laid out and easy to follow, and you learn things. And then it also ties back to things that were mentioned previously. So I thought that was really well laid out, but everything else I had to reread a few times.
Besties, if you've read the SJM verse, I would say that the beginning of From Blood and Ash is like Crescent City 1 light. People's qualms with Crescent City 1 is that it is a major dump of information in the first few pages, and it's really a dump. I'm having trouble like even putting it into words, but it's such a massive info dump of the entire hierarchy and all of these creatures, and you don't know what any of the very similar to this. You don't know what any of these creatures are, but you know, without going too much into it, there are different houses, and so which creatures go into which houses, and you know, there's a war on a different continent, and this is the government structure, and all of these things. This is how the city is, you know, arranged. And it can be very, very overwhelming. But I think what you have to do with a fantasy book, and I think it's probably what you would have done if you were just reading this for pleasure, is read it and just go along with it. And things will become clearer as you go along, either because the context will make things clearer or the author will repeat something in order to clarify it for you. But I could understand when we're starting this whole new world for the first time and we're trying to break it down and discuss it and organize our thoughts in some sort of coherent way, that it could be overwhelming.
For sure. That was part of it. Absolutely. I'm like, I have to talk about this, but I don't understand what I'm talking about.
Yeah. I mean, truthfully, I'd read the book before as well, and I told you my notes are kind of chaotic, and I'm not too sure how I'm going to organize them. Also because this is a new way of operating for us. So besties, bear with us. If you have any feedback about how we're doing things, please let us know, because we're just trying to throw things at the wall and see what sticks and see if we like it and see if you like it. And we just thought that this would be an interesting and informative way of organizing our episodes. So yeah, let us know.
All right. Let's
start with the world building.
Yeah.
Okay. Another thing is that we are only doing 4 chapters an episode. I'm doing the odd chapter numbers and Elyse is doing the even. And so when we talk about the world building, I will cover the world building in my chapters, and she will cover the world building in her chapters, but we're going to do it all at the beginning of the episode.
But that being said, feel free to jump in, because
and feel free to ask me questions as well.
Is more in depth than mine.
Yeah, absolutely. The problem is, though, I also have to be careful because there are some things that we haven't been exposed to yet.
Absolutely.
So, okay, so the first world building topic I wanted to cover is the geography. So our story takes place in Macedonia, which is a city in the kingdom of Solus. The kingdom of Solus is ruled by Queen Ileana and King Jalara. In this kingdom, there's also something called the Blood Forest. And the Blood Forest is exactly what it sounds like. It is a place where the trees bleed, and it's filled with spooky creatures, and it's a dangerous place that you really do not want to find yourself in, and it's quite large. Then there's a place called Atlantia. And also, side note, JLA, I do not ascribe to this, but JLA gets a lot of shtick because of the way she names things. So like Atlantia, Atlantis, that kind of thing.
Didn't even cross my mind, but okay.
It didn't cross my mind either until someone much smarter than me brought it up. So Atlantia is a corrupt and twisted kingdom that had fallen at the end of the War of Two Kings. And the two kings are the kings of Solus and the kings of Atlantia. The heir to this kingdom is Prince Castile. He is, quote, a monster who causes bloodshed and is the embodiment of pure evil. He is also known as the Dark One, and we're taught that he is the cause of the mist and the terrible creatures within it. Also, I forgot to mention that Carcedonia is the capital of Solus.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Poppy talks about going to the capital or having spent her childhood in Carcedonia, and that is the capital of Solus. That is where Queen Ileana and King Jalara live.
Okay. I thought the capital was Macedonia.
No, so Macedonia is one of the big cities. It's ruled by the Duke and Duchess Tyrman, but yeah, they're not the king and queen, so.
Do we have our...
Oh, shoot! Yes, we do.
Okay.
Besties, we just had to make a quick interruption because if you're watching us on YouTube, you will see we have our little mini whiteboard that we are going to be using to track our reading comprehension tally and our dimples tally and our Poppy's question
tally.
Yeah.
And to be clear, the reading comprehension is when we fuck up.
Yep. So Elyse.
Yeah, that's what made me think of the board.
So, okay. So are we going to keep track of the lack of reading comprehension or the, okay, not
when we fuck up.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Well, Elyse got the first tally of the season.
Macedonia is not the capital.
Exactly. Okay. You good for geography?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the type of guards. There are two types of guards. There's the rise guards and the huntsmen. So I think it would be helpful to explain what a rise is for those who do not read a lot of fantasy. Basically, it's a really big wall that protects cities within the kingdom of Solus. Villages and towns are protected by smaller versions of a rise, but protecting the rise is a dangerous job, one that doesn't allow for a long life. So rise guards are these tough, powerful men who often die young. These are men who are skilled in hand-to-hand combat and all manner of weaponry. Then there's the huntsmen. And the huntsmen are actually soldiers. So they're from the army, whereas rise guards, it's like a totally separate entity. And these are soldiers who ferry communications between cities and escort travelers and goods between cities and towns. So between areas that are protected by a rise. They're often, like I just said, outside the protection of the rise. And this is the most dangerous occupation you can ever have because of all of the creepy creatures that I mentioned that are in the Blood Forest. So a lot of times the huntsmen have to cross through the Blood Forest in order to go from city or town to city or town. Now we're going to talk about the types of creatures / people. I didn't really know how to make this category. Whatever.
Creatures and people.
Creatures and people. So we've got the Wolven, and these are neither man nor beast, like I just said, but both. We don't really know much else. We have the Ascended, and again, we don't really know much about the Ascended. All we know is that they live a very, very long time, and that they covet beauty above all else because attractiveness is seen as godlike. Then we have ladies and lords in wait. These are human beings. They're just second sons and daughters who are given to the royal court upon their 13th birthdays during the annual rite. And this is the precursor to becoming an Ascended. So all Ascended are second sons and daughters. Then we have dissenters. Dissenters are supporters of Prince Castile. They're known for starting protests and rallies, as well as abducting many Ascended. When they're caught, they are killed immediately. They don't get a trial. They don't go to prison. There is no justice system for dissenters. They are made up of people with Atlantean blood and non-Atlantean supporters as well.
And then finally, we have the Craven, which are also momentarily called the Cursed. So once cursed, turning can take a matter of hours or up to 3 days to turn. And basically, you are bitten by a Craven, much like a vampire, And then within a couple hours or 3 days, you will turn into a craven. So there's just like a brief 3-day window where you are considered a cursed.
Right.
Not cursed, a cursed, which I found weird. But anyway. So turning includes elongated canines and nails to tear through skin and muscle. And they become driven by an insatiable hunger for blood, and they slaughter everyone. Their eyes are blood red. They could only be killed by fire, bloodstone, or a stake made from wood of the blood forest.
Yeah, exactly. This world also, small mention, has electricity, but it's very expensive, so not every household has access to it. They also do not have plumbing.
Which is...
We don't know this yet, but because we're talking about electricity, I figured
insane
I'd talk about they've got electricity?
Yeah,
I know.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're also introduced to a network of people or a group of people who are kind of opposed to the ways of the kingdom. So they believe that people who are cursed should die with dignity. The way the kingdom treats the cursed is by dragging them through the street and burning them alive.
Yeah.
But there is a group of people who oppose that. So it's considered treason. But basically what they do is they'll hang a white handkerchief by a door as a symbol to communicate with one another. And there's a group of people who will go in and kill the cursed before fully turning or before being dragged and burned alive.
Yeah, because essentially this network of people, they understand that a person who is cursed is not cursed by any fault of their own.
Yeah.
Exactly. They're usually people who are guards, huntsmen, people who are actually protecting the rest of society. And so this network of people believes that their sacrifice, the sacrifice of their safety, the sacrifice that they've made, and unfortunately the consequence of that being that they are bitten or they're cursed.
It is crazy that like this happens in service to the kingdom, and then the kingdom is like, well, it sucks for you. I'm gonna.
Yeah, it's just a means of control. Also, the population is very, very sheltered. They're not aware. I mean, Poppy talks about it in the beginning of chapter 1, that if people knew how bad it was, there would be anarchy. So it's a way of controlling the narrative. It's a way of ensuring that the population feels safe, because if their government is quickly, swiftly taking care of the threat, which is the craven, you know.
How very Navarian of them.
This will be following us for many moons, I feel. All right.
Okay.
Let's start with chapter 1.
Yeah. Okay. Chapter 1. Poppy has snuck out to visit the Red Pearl, a den filled with gambling and pleasure. She's fascinated by the women around her, women that have freedoms she does not. The maiden, the chosen, lives a seemingly guarded life. With a bit of a nudge, however, she goes upstairs to one of the bedrooms, and to her surprise, someone is waiting.
If we set aside all the world building that you found really overwhelming, I love the beginning of this book.
I didn't. I figured you would. I really didn't like chapter 2.
Really?
I didn't like it at all. I found what she did was creepy as hell and really pervy. And if roles were reversed, people would be rioting. So I don't want to...
I do give you that.
I don't want to give her a pass on that. I was like, oh, this is not for me. But also, I have said it many times, if there is spice and intimacy and I'm not invested in the couple, I don't care for it.
Yeah.
And we're like starting off with like...
I mean, I wouldn't say it was spice.
He sucks on her nipple. That's not nothing.
No.
But to me, like, intimate scenes between people I don't care for, it doesn't do it for me. And I couldn't get past what she did. I found it so, like, I didn't like it. It made me really uncomfortable. But by chapter 4, I was like, oh, now I'm interested.
Okay.
But I really did struggle through these first few chapters.
Okay. That's okay.
But I was also like, so many people told me how good the book is, so I'm just going to keep going.
Also because we committed to doing an entire season.
Well, you know. But no, I know so many people have said it's good, but starting it off, I was like, okay.
I guess I didn't read too much into it. I did have in my notes, I did want to ask you how you felt about, clearly you didn't like it. Yeah. I mean, listen, do I agree with that behavior? No. But I kind of just went along with it because...
Yeah. I was like, what's wrong with you? Say something. It made me so uncomfortable. Anyway.
I'll just say it now and we can talk about it more later. I guess it's hypocritical of me, but I think the fact that Hawke just like went along with it and it's expressly stated that both he and her have the physical skills to get themselves out of the situation should they want to, didn't make me feel icky because it just felt like two consenting adults.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. And they both could have gotten out of it. I just couldn't get past it. I was like, that's the biggest red flag of life. Like, what is happening? And I couldn't get past it. Anyway, that's chapter 2.
Okay,
let's get back to chapter 1.
So this book opens on a really ominous note. Quote, they found Finley this eve just outside the Blood Forest, dead. What a way to open a book. Our main character is playing cards with a bunch of men, and we get a mention of not feeling anything from them. No physical or emotional pain. So that kind of triggers the explanation that our main character has some sort of gift where they can sense feelings, but for some reason, the use of this gift is forbidden.
Yeah, I mean, at this point anyway, she only talks about pain. So I was just like, oh man, she's like an extreme empath almost. What a horrible power. We don't know the extent of it. It's just an introduction, but just like feeling the pain of the world around you, like I would call that a curse.
Yeah, so the way she explains it is that for the most part, it's not like it smacks her in the face, okay? Like it's the type of thing where she would just focus on you. And if she focused on you, then she would be able to kind of have a sense of whether you're in physical or emotional pain. Not sure if she describes it yet, but she does say that sometimes people project it, which is when, you know, maybe they're in just such incomprehensible pain that they can't keep it under control. And sometimes she can probe a person. So she does mention later on that she had probed Hawke and had sensed that he had this really deep emotional pain within him that he kept covered up. So it's interesting to see kind of the way that this power works, but it definitely is, I would say it's a blessing and a curse, because as we see in chapter 4, she does use it for good.
In chapter 4, yeah, we see another side of the power, because right now, all we know is she feels what people are feeling.
Right.
So at this point, I was like, that sounds not fun, and I'm curious to see how this is good.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Because we didn't know there was another layer to it.
But see, that's kind of one of the things that I personally liked, because as you read the book, it's almost like you're getting these breadcrumbs and you're discovering a little bit more. So
for sure. I think some things were very well breadcrumbed. But also some of the stuff I found harder to follow. So
fair enough. So our character notes that it's odd that these men don't seem to be carrying a lot of pain because of their jobs. These are guards from the Rise. Our character notes that despite these guards being off duty and in a pleasure hall, they are still armed, and so is she. But this isn't unusual. She's got a ton of weapons. It's just that the dagger she's currently wearing is her favorite. So I like that this is starting to give us a sense of who she is. She is not this helpless woman. She is a woman who knows how to defend herself. She's a woman who is so comfortable with weaponry that she can have a favorite.
And we already get a sense that, like, we know she shouldn't be there, so she has a rebellious streak, and she doesn't necessarily believe in the rules of her world. So yeah, I agree. I thought it was a good intro to seeing who she is as a person.
And so we also learn that not only is she not meant to be at the Red Pearl because she's a woman or because of her status in society, but mainly because she is, quote, the maiden, the chosen. There's also a mention of the Duke of Macedonia and his friend Lord Mazine, who both like to punish her.
Yeah. Creepy.
It's very creepy.
There's like some language used later on when she's talking about the Duke that just gave me so much ick, but
it should. He's an icky man.
It'll come. I'll pull it out later when I'm there in the notes. But yeah, every time he's mentioned, I'm just like, oh.
Yeah, he's really not great.
Yeah.
But our main character is masked, so odds are nobody will recognize her. Plus, she said she can count on one hand the number of people in Macedonia who have seen her face. And that's because, as the maiden, she's always wearing this veil that covers her face and hair. Only her lips and jaw are exposed. And we also learn that she is only allowed to wear white.
Yeah, and she's not the only one, right? With masks, like a lot of people are wearing masks.
Yeah, a lot of people in the Red Pearl are wearing masks for a variety of reasons, but she's obviously wearing it because she needs to conceal her identity.
For sure. I just noted, I love the idea of wearing masks and stuff, and it makes so much sense that people are wearing them there to a pleasure den, you know? Because I remember I had gone to see Sleep No More in New York, and basically what it is, it's been running for like a really long time, but it's a kind of interactive show.
Oh my gosh, I've heard about this. Who was I talking to about it? I was just talking about this with someone. Yeah, I can't remember who, but I was saying that there's this kind of show where you're in a space and you're moving from space to space and there's different... That's so funny. Yeah. Okay, I forgot that that's what it was called.
And it's huge. There's several floors. You're allowed to go literally anywhere, including sometimes you end up sort of in a backstage area. If you just follow the actors, you could end up backstage with them. Like, it's such an original thing. Like, there's a lot of interactive shows out there, but that space was really, really unique. And you're allowed to touch anything. There's drawers and you could find notes and you end up reading notes and you learn more about the characters. And it's all based on a Shakespearean play, so you would know the story, but everyone going is given masks. So all the people who are just watching the show, we all have these masks on. And the reason they do it is because people are more likely to feel comfortable rummaging through the set and touching things and doing things. You're not allowed to talk, but touching things and doing things because their identity is concealed. And I always just found that concept so cool. And it's true because you feel guarded somehow. You just feel like you have this veil, so it doesn't matter. There could be an actor and you're like literally standing right next to them and then you're going through drawers while they're performing and it like doesn't matter. I don't know. It's just a cool concept.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. The guards censor themselves. They don't want to have a discussion about what happened to this guy Finley in mixed company, but our main character is processing the information regardless and teaching us about the world and the creatures as she's eavesdropping on their conversation. In doing so, we learn that many of those who return from outside the rise come back cursed, like we were talking about in our world building segment, and that the Duke and Duchess of Macedonia hide the true scope of the curse from the public in order to avoid igniting mass hysteria. Again, like I had mentioned. However, we learned something really big that's going to come and have repercussions through the entire series. Our female main character and her brother have had a firsthand experience with whatever is out there. So she has experienced something extremely traumatic in her childhood.
Yeah. I was like, what has she lived?
She starts to calm herself because these nasty thoughts are making it so that these emotions are starting to rise within her. And then she notices that she's being dealt a bad hand while she's playing cards. And she's like, I've played enough cards with my brother to know this is time for me to call it a day. Nothing good is going to come from this. So she gets up, she grabs a glass of champagne, and she scopes out the place. And as she does this, she's very careful to keep her senses to herself. We learn that her gift allows her to close herself to other people who project their emotions off onto her. So like we were saying before, even though it could be quite overwhelming to have this gift, and even though people could be projecting their emotions onto her, she does have this mechanism that allows her to close it off so that it doesn't overwhelm her. And now she's just drinking her champagne, scoping out the room. She notices a woman selling herself to a bunch of men. She notices many women in vibrant colors wearing masks, like we said before, to protect their identity. And what I love about it is that she's just observing and not judging. She's just taking it all in.
Yeah, I found it interesting because she seems very fascinated by people's sexuality and overtness. And like you said, she's not judging. She actually seems curious in a way of almost longing. Like you could see that sex is something that's at the forefront of her mind and she's super interested.
Well, I mean, she's 18.
Oh, I understand. I get it. But I'm just saying, like, already we see that she's like kind of being coy about it, but you could also see the interest there, you know?
For sure. But I mean, listen, she's an incredibly sheltered person. The fact that she's there, the fact that she must hide her identity, all kind of gives us that impression. That's when she finally introduces herself as Penelope. And she calls herself Penelope of Castle Tierman, kin of the Balfours, and the Queen's favorite.
I don't like her name.
I like the name Penelope.
Me too.
Penelope, meh. But listen, they barely call her that. They call her Poppy.
Poppy, I think, is adorable.
I think Poppy love that name super so cute, much.
But I don't know. Every time I read the name Penelope, I'm like, really? That's what we went with? Okay.
So like I just said, she's 18, and on her next birthday, she's going to ascend with all of the lords and ladies in wait. She's out tonight in search of freedom and independence. As we can imagine, as the chosen / maiden, this is probably a very constricting and controlling existence, or controlled existence. So tonight she tells herself, I'm just Poppy and I'm just going to live a little. And she's like looking out again onto the crowd, and she notices a guard propositioning a woman. And when she sees that, she's like, do I want it? Yeah, I think I do. And I love that. I love how this self-awareness is kind of being exposed right off the bat. And you kind of talked about it before, but I love her pushing back on the conventional wisdom about her virginity being linked to her goodness.
Yeah, I wrote the passage because I loved it.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Purity, I hated the word, the meaning behind it, as if my virginity determined my goodness, my innocence, and its presence or lack thereof was something more important than the 100 choices I made every day.
Yeah, I love that. And later on, she does talk about how these ladies in wait, she'd overheard them talking about ways that you can, you know, keep your purity while doing other things. And it just feels very, very real. As we're reading all of these thoughts of Poppy's, we're getting the sense that maybe she doesn't want to be the maiden. Maybe she's questioning what it means to be the maiden, or what it means to be chosen, or what it means to be worthy of the gods.
I mean, it was something that was, as far as I know, bestowed upon her. She had no choice in it, right?
No.
So makes sense that she's like,
Exactly. I wrote here, I'd love your opinion on these opening few pages of the book, but you've already given your opinion.
I mean, in terms of the surroundings and where we are and stuff, I just, like I said, it's the world building I found a little bit confusing.
Yeah, that's
overwhelming.
Fair.
Yeah.
Anyway, Poppy's not planning on banging anyone. Really, the decision to come to the Red Pearl, she says, had been a spur of the moment decision because she'd been unable to sleep, which happens to her quite often. And she just basically decided, I'm going to leave the castle and do something about it tonight. She's kind of awkwardly people watching, unsure about what to do next, and she feels like someone is watching her. And she's about to turn towards the exit and leave when she hears music that has her entranced and curious. Before she could enter the side room where the music is being played and people are dancing, a voice calls out, warning her that she doesn't think Poppy wants to go there. And the woman can tell that it's Poppy's first time at the Red Pearl. She even recognizes her as the maiden, which is really bizarre because Poppy's wearing a blue cloak, so she's not in her traditional white, and she's wearing a mask and her hair is covered. So all of the identifying markers that would make her known as the maiden are hidden. So how does this woman know who she is? Curious.
It is.
Anyway, Poppy's like, no, I'm a second daughter. And the woman says something that I really think you should park.
Okay.
Quote, you are like a second daughter, but not in the way that you intend. The woman assures Poppy that her secret is safe with her. She has nothing to gain by earning favor with the Duke and Duchess by telling on her. Poppy doesn't understand why this woman would give her such grace unless she was a dissenter. But she doesn't have a choice because as she's debating what to do, where to go, Victor walks in, and not only that, but he sets himself up facing the only exit. Now, Victor is one of her two bodyguards, but he's more than that. He's the one who's taught her how to defend herself, how to fight, and he's also a father figure to her. And she knows that while he wouldn't get her in trouble by telling on her to the Duke and Duchess, he would give her a long lecture about being where she wasn't supposed to be, which is very fatherly.
Yeah.
The lady gives her an out, go upstairs to an unoccupied room, and I'll come get you when the coast is clear. So she goes up the stairs to one of the private rooms and steps in to the one that the lady had told her to go into. And as she enters...
Before she goes upstairs, though, she does give us a bit of background on Victor.
Okay.
And talks about how... Because she's kind of, like, freaked out because she's like, my father-like figure is here with sex workers and this is weird, which I get that reaction. But she does go into he's a widow and he really loved his wife and everything. And I just think it humanizes him in a way because... Like, she talks about how much he loved his wife, but now he obviously doesn't have a wife and he's lonely, so he turns to sex workers. I like that as a concept. And again, she's a little like, ew, I don't want to see my dad with a woman, but she's not judging it either. And I just thought that was nice. Because he's lonely, you know?
Yeah, and he's been a widow for a long time because his wife died before she met him. And I don't know if we know this yet, but she came to Macedonia when she was like 9 or 10.
Okay.
Something like that. Maybe a little bit older. I can't remember. But it's been many years that he's been alone. So Poppy goes up the stairs to the private room that the lady had instructed her that was vacant, quote unquote. And as she enters, an arm pulls her into a very hard male body and a deep voice whispers, quote, this is unexpected. Boom. End of the chapter.
She also notes right before that happens that the room smells like dark spices and pine. And I love how every book boyfriend has
Smells
a very,
like pine?
very specific scent.
Yeah.
Like everyone has a scent.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't go about my day-to-day life noticing specific scents for everyone. But
Well, I notice how people smell, but I don't identify it with an actual smell. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone has a smell, but it's just in book world.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, he smelt of leather and whatever, you know?
I don't know that, I mean, obviously it's because it's trying to be evocative, but even in like real life, if I smell someone's perfume, I'll just be like, oh, that's a spicy perfume or a sweet perfume or a flowery perfume. And it ends there. That's the end of my description. But also I'm the kind of person when I eat food, I'm just like, oh, this tastes really good. I can't identify what it actually tastes like. My sister is the kind of person where she can taste food and she can tell you all the spices that went into it and all the ingredients. It's really impressive.
Yeah, Scott's like that too.
Yeah, I can't do that.
I mean, he's a professional taster in a way. Like,
yeah, it's true.
He'll ask me sometimes, like, he'll try a new beer recipe and be like, oh, like, what does it taste like? And he always tells me, like, you can't be wrong because however your taste buds interpret something, like, that is true to you. So it doesn't matter what you say, like, just say whatever.
I would just be like, it tastes like beer. Maybe I'm just really uncultured or something, but like with wine, with beer, it tastes like wine, tastes like beer. Like with a wine, I could tell if it's like dry or if it's too sweet or if I find it too oaky, fine. But like those are very, very broad strokes. Beer, I could not tell you the difference between, if we're talking, let's say all light beers, they all taste the same to me.
That's fair.
Maybe it's also because I don't drink enough.
Yeah.
And maybe I haven't just been educated, but I have like no desire. First of all, if I'm gonna have a drink, most of the time it's gonna be a glass of wine or a cocktail. And I'll tell you, I like a lemony cocktail and I like a crisp glass of wine. And that's it. That's where it ends. I like what I like and that's it.
So how many dimples did we get?
I have 0 dimples.
0 dimples. Well, we haven't met the dimple man yet.
The dimple man.
What about questions?
I counted 9. How many did you
9.
count? Yeah, okay.
So I had counted 7, but then I asked you if you counted even when it was a one-word question, and you said yes, so I redid my count.
Okay. Do you have awards for this chapter?
Yeah.
Okay.
So for romantic, it's just kind of like a gesture that I thought was kind in the moment, though looking back now, I'm like, not nefarious, but she was up to something, was the lady telling her where to hide.
Okay. Yeah, mine was along the same lines. It's when she says, because everyone should be able to live a little, even for a few hours.
And what about funniest?
I don't have a funniest line.
I just wrote, I needed to scrub my eyes, because that was her reaction to seeing Victor with a woman.
That's funny. My spiciest line is, this is unexpected.
Oh, okay.
What's yours?
Through the curtains, I can make out shapes of bodies churning in time with the music. Their movements full of mesmerizing and fluid grace. Some danced alone, their curves and their forms clearly outlined, while others ... And that's it. Chapter 2. Being mistaken for someone else, Poppy gets her first kiss and grapples with whether or not she wants to go further. Hawke Flynn catches her in her lie, but instead of pushing her away, he is intrigued. Neither one of them sure of why they're there. They still can't seem to pull away from each other.
Talking about this chapter is going to be so interesting. You know what? Actually, Nicole messaged me once. She was like, the fact that you guys disagree is so entertaining. So I feel like that'll happen today and that'll be fun for our listeners to hear.
Okay, let's get into it.
Let's get into it.
It's funny because I read the 4 chapters and then I went back and like did my notes rereading them, especially because I was confused. I was like, I need to read this more than once to actually understand. But I was like, oh no, I have to talk about chapter 2 and I didn't like it and I know Myriam's going to like it. Anyway.
I love how predictable we are.
I know. Well, I mean, we spent an awful lot of time together.
Tis true.
So Poppy is caught off guard, a mistake that Victor taught her never to make. There's a man's arm around her waist and his hand is on her hip. And he says it's a welcome surprise. So we're picking up exactly where we left off. She's still wearing her cloak and hood, and she kind of turns around to face him and realizes that he is a super tall man and that it's Hawke Flynn, one of the rise guards from Cardonia. Carcedonia.
Yeah, so Hawke was from Carcedonia, and then he came to Macedonia when there was an opening within the rise guards.
Right. So Poppy says that everyone knows who he is because he's hard to ignore, and then like lists all these things about him. So
he's hot.
His striking height. He's only a year or 2 older than her, making him one of the youngest guards. She's noticed the way he moves with predatory grace. He has a sense of authority that seems to bleed from his pores. His skill with a sword is undeniable, and he is beautiful.
I love how Poppy, when she realizes that it's Hawke, can't even lie to herself.
Well, she kind of does, because she's like, well, everyone knows who he is because of all these things. And then she's like, well, maybe it's just me that notices these things.
Yeah, she's just like enamored with him, as is everyone else. And I just like that she is at least intellectually honest enough to own up to the fact that she's really into the way he looks.
Oh, yeah. Because then she goes on about his dark curly hair and his dark eyebrows and his jaw that's chiseled from the gods. That's not what she says. That's my interpretation. But, and his eyes. There's a whole page of him talking about how hot this guy is.
So, okay, question for you. You used to love the way Violet would describe Xaden. Mm-hmm. Do you have similar feelings about the way Poppy is describing Hawke?
As in, do I like it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I like it.
Okay.
Sure, yeah. My issue with this chapter is that
is the concealed identity.
She conceals her identity. He clearly thinks she's someone else. She lets it go. There was a fine line and she crossed it. It could have gone a little bit, but she went too far with it that it became creepy because she knows who he is. If he was a stranger, I feel like it would be less creepy. But there's like intent there. Mm-hmm. She's like, oh, this is the guy I've had a crush on forever. If I don't say anything, maybe he'll kiss me. That's creepy.
You think she has a crush on him other than thinking that he's super attractive?
Well, he's caught her attention.
Yeah.
So she's not mad about him kissing her.
Well, obviously.
So I just think because she knows who he is and he obviously thinks she's someone else, that's where the ick is for me.
Okay.
And I had trouble getting past it. So that's all I could think about for the rest of it.
That's just the first kiss. As soon as they kiss, he knows she's someone else.
Well, yeah, he notices, but I was just so icked out by the situation. Really? Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I said. I couldn't get past it.
Okay. Keep going.
So she, like you kind of said before, she reaches to feel his pain threshold. I don't know what to call it.
Yeah, his pain, levels of pain.
Levels of pain, yeah. And then she senses that he's always in pain, not the physical kind, but like more the emotional kind. So I wrote like, oh, he's a sad boy.
Yeah, we have another broody boy.
Poppy then reveals, kind of like a side note, that she's never sensed any pain from the Ascended, which creeps her out. So she kind of stays away from them, which just made me be like, do they not feel pain, or are they not immune to her powers?
Yeah, immune to her powers.
Yeah, immune to her powers. Anyway.
We don't know yet.
We don't know yet. Just questions I had. I feel like I had a lot of like moments of, wait, what? Mm-hmm. Because we are given such little breadcrumbs, and I know that's just because we're at the beginning. Then Hawke goes on to say that he wasn't expecting her tonight, clearly demonstrating that he knows the owner of this cloak.
Rendezvous with her.
Yeah. I wrote, he and Britta are hooking up, question mark. And she feels jealous. That's why, I don't know if you want to call it a crush. Obviously, there's interest there.
Yeah.
You know? And then Poppy's panicked, but she doesn't say anything. And then instead, she just kind of takes stock of the room, and she notices that there's 2 glasses on the table and starts questioning whether or not he was with someone else before.
But she does notice that the bed,
yes, is still perfectly made. So if he was with someone else, maybe it wasn't that kind of someone.
Or it could have happened on the couch.
Oh, I was going to say up against the wall, but
that
too. There's many ways to yeah. Then Poppy begins to think that the woman downstairs might have been a seer and sent her there on purpose, which makes me just question why. Why would this woman do that if she is a seer?
Well, maybe because she knows that Poppy wanted freedom and to experience things, and she knew who was up there, and so she said, "Oh, if maybe I just set up
down for it."
Yeah, exactly. If I set up this situation, why not?
Maybe. So Hawke is talking to her like she's Britta and asking her questions, but Poppy only responds by shaking her head because she isn't ready for him to discover she is not Britta. And this is where I was like, okay, now we're towing the line. It's time to say something. And she doesn't. And that's why I was like, this is icky. Because, like, at what point does it go too far?
I don't know. I guess you just have to think she must be so desperate for this moment. And not because she's so obsessed with him, but because her life is so sheltered, and in her mind, this is her one opportunity to live and have a night of freedom, that she really wants to take advantage of it, and she doesn't want to do anything that would jeopardize that. I'm giving her a lot of grace.
Yeah. But then
mainly because I like her.
Yeah, which is fine. I'm not saying I dislike her. I just don't like. No, I don't
you just
agree
haven't
with
had the chance to like her yet.
I like her. I don't like what she did.
No, I know. Okay. Well, okay.
Because then, kind of like what I was saying before, I was thinking like if the roles were reversed.
But the roles are not reversed.
No, but
Let's not read too much into it.
I'm very like, if we double standards.
Okay, this is a spoiler for Akamath and Akawar. This is not an Ianthe situation.
No, I'm not saying that it is.
Okay.
I think it's deceitful. He reacted really well. He reacted super well.
Yeah.
That might not have happened. I just think she knew the situation. She knew he thought there was someone else, and he let her think that. I find that so gross. So gross. I can't get past it.
It's a romance novel. It's not that serious.
That's not romantic. That's gross. It's deceitful. Anyway, so then he takes his shirt off, and she's staring and taking it all in because this man is chiseled and beautiful. And then she starts to realize that she should have said something and that she should reveal that she isn't Britta, but she still doesn't because he might touch or kiss her or more, which is something she's kind of interested in. And then she chalks up what she's doing to living, kind of like what you were saying, which I think is creepy. Anyway. And then Hawke picks her up and whisks her to the bed and lays her down gently, climbs on top of her.
Which she does note she finds super impressive because she
says she's not light.
Yeah, she says that she, no matter how much exercise she does, she will never be a waif like the Duchess and whatever. So she finds it extra attractive that he can throw her around.
Who doesn't like being thrown around?
Exactly.
And then he climbs on top of her and kisses her. And she's panicked a bit, but she's also kind of loving it and feels a pulse between her legs. If you know what I mean.
A throb.
Oh, does she say? I wrote pulse. You sure? Same sensation. It's fine. But then all of a sudden he breaks the kiss and asks, who are you? Because basically she's not a very good kisser.
I don't know if it's that she's not a very good kisser. It's just that Britta's a super aggressive kisser.
Yeah. I think he sensed the
inexperience.
Yeah. Which, hey, we all got to have our first kiss. So
absolutely.
Nothing wrong with that. And in that moment, all she could think is, wow, that was my first kiss. So I think part of it is like this whole thing is veiled by like, oh, but I'm naive and this is all so new to me. And like, to me, it's not an excuse.
But that's because you are a 30-something-year-old woman who has had romantic experience and lived a life and is worldly. And
I'm not saying wanting it. It's the way she went about it.
Yeah, but like, do you really think this sheltered girl would have the wherewithal to know that this is wrong? I don't.
Well, she does have the thought of like, I should say something because he thinks I'm Britta, and that she chooses not to.
I don't know. I don't read too much into it. What I will say though is this actually had me thinking about my first kiss, and it had me thinking about how she's so lucky that her first kiss was this good. My first kiss, I guess you could say old. I was 15.
Okay.
And I went to an all-girls school, so I didn't have like that much exposure to boys. And it was my first boyfriend and whatever. But like he was a 15 or 16-year-old guy. And I mean, it was fine because we were 15 or 16. But it's just so funny to think that like, imagine your first kiss was with somebody who was really experienced and like really knew what they were doing. What a different experience that would be.
I think firsts in romance and romantasy books are very unrealistic.
I know.
First.
I'm so happy I found these books after I was married because otherwise...
Yeah, expectations.
Oh my gosh, it would be terrible. I feel so bad for single girls reading this because every man they meet is going to be measured up against, you know, fae males that are hundreds of years old, or Zayden Ryerson, who at 23 somehow is very, very talented. Well, I mean, you know my hypothesis as to why, but regardless, you know?
Yeah, just in general, men written by women.
So good. So good. Love it. Okay, continue.
So yeah, he asks, who are you? And she's like, oh, wow, this is my first kiss. And Poppy's like, how do you know I wasn't her? But he's basically like, girl, your kiss. And she tries to deny it, but he calls her out for being a liar anyway. And then she tells him to get off her, but like, you could tell she doesn't actually want it.
Yeah, I mean, she does say that if she really wanted him off her, she would get him off her.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what you were saying at this point. It was two consenting adults. And to be honest, rereading it the second time, I felt less weird about it. But on my first read, I was just like shut down after that. I'm like, this is weird.
But that's also your personality. You're somebody where if you feel a certain way, it's very difficult to get you to not feel that way.
Yes, absolutely. And I shut down and put walls around myself.
Exactly.
Yes. I'm aware. Okay. I know my shortcomings, okay?
It's not a shortcoming.
No,
it's just a facet of your personality.
I could be a very, guarded person. But I think you know why, though? I was thinking about this today. I don't remember why. But growing up, I was I'm still a people pleaser, but I was such a person who just would go along with whatever anyone says, that now that I'm older, I just hold on to my own opinions a lot harder because I was so walked over in young adulthood.
You went from one extreme to the other.
Yeah. Because I'm like, no, this is how I feel and you're not going to change it.
Yeah.
Too bad. But
I'm sure at one point you'll mellow out and you'll find like a...
Yeah, maybe.
It's your journey. It makes you you.
Yeah. He then asks her, will you tell me who you are, princess? So he starts calling her princess.
What do you think of the
nickname? I was about to ask you.
I fucking love it.
I think it's cute. I like it.
I love a nickname.
I don't like that it's a thing. I feel like every single book I read, there's a nickname. And I'm like, we don't always have to have a nickname, guys.
Yeah, we do.
I don't feel that way, but I do enjoy princess because like princess is just a very generic name and it works. And I liked Violence, but I have read other books where I'm just like,
Tessa Bailey does that. Every couple has a nickname.
It feels like every book has a nickname.
But you know what? It makes sense. When you're in a couple, you have nicknames for each other.
I guess. Sometimes it just doesn't fit and it feels forced.
Do you think princess. It's because it's overused sometimes?
Maybe.
Not in the sense of the I don't know if it's a trope, but more in the sense of the nickname is overused in conversation and stuff.
I don't know.
Maybe. Okay.
Or it's like a weird choice because they don't want to use one that's already been known and famously used. So they tried a new word and it just doesn't work. I don't know.
Yeah.
Whereas like princess is super genera and it works.
Genera?
Yeah, generic. Like Genera brand? Super generic? You've never heard anyone say that? Okay.
I thought you were, by accident, saying the word generic wrong.
No, it's like a word.
Oh, okay.
It's not a real word, but it's a used word.
Never heard of that before.
Okay.
Well, we learn new things every day on this podcast.
So at this point, she's refusing to tell him her name, but he introduces himself. But then he's like, but I think you knew that already.
It's so cocky. I love it.
I know. I do like his bravado. Although at this point, I was like, how is she not dying of embarrassment right now? I think I was just feeling secondhand embarrassment for her while reading it. I don't know. And then he asks, why didn't she stop him? But she doesn't even know herself. And he still won't get off her because he wants answers. And she's still being very evasive. So then she refers to Britta as his lover. And he's like, no, we're just good friends. And she's like, oh, I didn't even know that friends could behave this way. And he's like, yeah, clearly you don't know much about these sort of things.
Aw, poor Poppy.
I know. Oh, man. But it's cute. Like, it was good banter. She then asks, you wager all of this on just one kiss. And he says, just one kiss, princess. You could learn a wealth of things from just one kiss.
Mm-hmm.
And then she still won't answer his questions, so he won't get up. But then she starts asking questions, which are odd questions. I guess it's just like she's nervous, so she doesn't know how to deal with the situation because she's like almost like job interviewing him all of a sudden, you know? She's like, well, why'd you join the Rise? Like, what is happening?
Well, she does mention at the beginning of chapter 1 of how she's really bad in social situations and asks really random questions because like she gets put on the spot and she doesn't know what to do. Yeah. So I think this was kind of that kind of situation. I think one of the things he says before she starts asking him questions is, well, what are you doing here? Yeah. And, you know, why did you let me kiss you or blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And then she was like, oh, I just wanted to talk. And so he's like, okay, what do you want to talk about? And then I think that put her on the spot.
Yeah, I think that also added to the awkwardness of the situation. Which
it was super awkward.
Part of the reason why I was like not into the chapter, because she asks like, "Why did you join the Rise?" And I wrote, "This is just getting worse." But we do learn a bit about his background, that he is a farmer's son, and joining the Guard could raise his station in the world. And then Poppy reveals that both her parents are dead. They kind of discuss the difficulties of losing loved ones, which I thought was a nice little exchange. I don't know if this is important, but Poppy's mind goes back to Finley, which is the guy who was mentioned at the beginning of the book. And she goes back to him a few times. So I don't know if it's going to be significant. His name keeps popping up, so I thought it was worth mentioning.
Okay.
No? Yes? Maybe?
I'm not going to say anything.
Okay.
I'm going to let you have these thoughts.
Okay. And basically she's wondering if Hawke knew him and if they worked together.
Yeah, because she's thinking, could the person that Hawke have lost be the cause of his anguish? Mm-hmm. And then she's wondering who was that person to him? Mm-hmm. And then could it have been Finley?
I feel like that's a little fresh, but...
Yeah, I don't really know. But anyway, yeah.
Hawke then says, "You did not come here to talk about sad things that cannot be changed, princess." And Poppy realizes he's right. She came here to live, to experience, to choose, and to be anyone other than who she really was. And then she realizes, again, she's like, oh my God, I just had my first kiss, and it doesn't have to stop there. But then she's also kind of feeling the guilt of losing her virginity because of being the maiden. And she says that she would be punished and exiled by the gods. So again, we don't fully know what being a maiden is, but obviously purity is something super important to it. And then she states that if upon ascension she is found unworthy by the gods, she will be exiled by the kingdom.
Mm-hmm. Which basically is assured death, because if you're exiled by the kingdom, mm-hmm. you're going to be sent outside of the rise, which is outside of
with
protection.
All the monsters.
Yeah.
And that's where it ends.
And that's where it ends. I wrote here, what did you think about Poppy kind of hoodwinking Hawke into kissing her by not revealing she wasn't who he expected her to be? But I think we have our answer.
I think we covered that.
Yeah. Okay. Dimple count.
2.
I have 3.
Oh. Maybe you're right. You're probably right.
I don't know.
I honestly, doing this counting thing, I was like, oh, I'm going to need to find a better system because my brain is not good at it.
Oh, I just search it on my laptop.
I don't have the PDF. So 3?
Yeah.
3 dimples. And how many questions do you have?
I have 9 again.
I have 9 as well.
Ooh, look at us.
Good. So we're at 18. Awards?
Yes.
What is your most romantic?
I just love when Hawke calls her princess. Basically that whole thing. I'm just like, oh, delicious.
That's so funny. I wrote, the planes and angles on his face made me yearn for talent with a brush or a pen.
That's just so
poetic.
Yeah. What is your funniest line?
Because the last time I kissed the owner of this cloak, she damn near sucked my tongue down her throat.
Me too.
Really?
But honestly, like, that doesn't sound like a particularly enjoyable kiss
I agree. And Poppy even calls it out. She's like, is that enjoyable? Honestly, yeah. Tongue sucking is not for me. And it's written a lot in books. And I don't get it. But it's just not my thing.
I mean, like a gentle, maybe. But like down her throat.
Yeah.
That's disgusting.
Yeah.
It makes me kind of want to gag.
Yeah, it's not for me.
No.
But if it's for you, good for you.
I'm not here to yuck anyone. Yes, not here to yuck anyone's yum. No, no, no.
Spiciest?
It was in the shivers that erupted all over my skin, in the inexplicable heaviness in my chest, in that curling, tightening sensation below my navel, and even lower still, where there was a sudden throbbing pulse between my legs. So you're right, there was a pulse, but it was a throbbing pulse.
Both
terms. Exactly.
Amazing. I didn't write anything.
Oh.
But that's
because you hated this chapter.
But it was because, I just felt uncomfortable. Chapter 3. Deciding she wants to go through with this, the steamy moment between Poppy and Hawke is interrupted by a knock at the door. Wah, wah. He is called away, but Poppy decides not to wait for his return. We then meet Tawny, Poppy's lady-in-waiting, also her best friend. She is jealous of Poppy's escapades. Then the chapter ends with Victor summoning Poppy because there is a cursed.
So the chapter opens with Poppy thinking about the only person on record who has been found unworthy of their ascension. Because remember, she still thinks that these actions that she's taking with Hawke in this room are going to make her unworthy. She's still technically a maiden, but she's kissed a boy, so she's not like 100% pure. And while she contemplates all the consequences for that person whose name has been erased by history, she's like, meh, I don't care. Hawke is hot. It's worth it. He first asks her to remove her mask, which she refuses, but when he asks her to remove her cloak, she allows him to. Quote, his fingers were deft. Deft fingers. No? Doesn't like excite you?
Sure. Yeah. I didn't read into it.
It was giving, I know how to handle a corset. You are so like closed off to anything in this moment being remotely erotic.
Yeah.
Sensual.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's fine. Hawke offers to give Poppy whatever she wants because he has nowhere else to be at the moment and he's intrigued. Big eye emojis. He starts complimenting her as he undoes the bow that holds together her cloak. And remember when she you mentioned, she noticed 2 glasses by the settee from chapter 2. We have an observant girl in our Poppy. She asks him about it. And he's like, yeah, I was catching up with a friend, but not a friend.
Not a good friend.
Yeah. Which makes her feel some relief and allows her to give him the green light for anything. What a way to start a book. If your name is Myriam, not if your name is Elyse. One of the things I love about Poppy, and it's actually one of the reasons I thought it'd be really fun to keep this tally of her questions, is that she's not afraid to reveal when she doesn't know something. She doesn't make any assumptions or pretends to know what she's talking about. She just owns it. And I think that that's really important. And I think that that's really rare, especially with women who don't want to be seen as inferior or silly or stupid or you name it. So I really love that she's just like, listen, I don't know. I want to know. I'm going to use the method to find things out. And that is asking questions.
Absolutely. I tell my students all the time that there's so much power in saying you don't know. As long as you're willing to make the effort to learn and to know, eventually, it's okay that you don't know everything. And it's okay to admit it.
Yeah.
It's so important.
Absolutely. Hawke asks her again to remove the mask, and we learn that Poppy's hesitation has more to do with what her face actually looks like than her identity being revealed. So this is just another little breadcrumb about her past.
Yeah. I assumed it's what happened beyond the rise when she was out in the world.
Possibly. But then Hawke is distracted by her dagger. And I was a little bit annoyed at first because he assumes that she carried a weapon but didn't know how to use it. And you know what? So is Poppy. She calls him out on it and assures him that she does know how to use it, which only intrigues him further.
I also thought it was interesting. He seemed to be very aware of the kind of blade that she had.
No, the blade was bloodstone. It's the hilt that is woven bone.
Yeah, but I thought it was the fact that she had a bloodstone blade.
Oh, I thought it was the woven
Interesting.
bone.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was because he was like, oh, this is to kill Craven.
Oh, okay. Both of our, it could be either one.
Either.
Yeah, so nobody gets a tally.
No.
Okay. Now he pounces on her and things are about to get hot and heavy, but they get interrupted by a knock at the door. Someone named Kieran comes bearing news that an envoy has arrived with the supplies that they've been waiting for. So Hawke gets up, but promises to return as soon as he can. He asks her to promise to wait for him, which she does, but she won't.
What supplies could be so important that he would be whisked away?
Who knows?
Who knows? Just got to ask the questions, even if we don't have the answers right now.
Yeah. The scene changes and Poppy is sitting with her friend Tawny in her sparse quarters. So this is something that is really briefly mentioned, and I think it's just important to point out because we've got the mention of punishments by the Duke, and now we also get a mention that her room loses furniture or accessories or whatever elements of her bedroom as punishment. So she's this revered, iconic figurehead.
Sacred, yeah.
Yeah, in their society. But at the same time, she's not being treated that
She's
way.
like a prisoner.
Kind of, yeah. So Tawny is one of the few people actually allowed to speak with Poppy. And it's quite sad because she's not sure that Tawny even likes her or wants to be friends with her, or if it's just an obligation because of her position. Because Tawny is there to keep her company and to dress her and to bathe her and to do all the things, that a lady in wait would do. But for Poppy, this is one of the few people that she can have honest and transparent interactions with. And she never has that full confidence that the relationship is fully reciprocated. Tawny asks her where Poppy was last night, and Poppy's like, oh, I was here. But Tawny is more clever than that. She checked on Poppy shortly after midnight and found her room empty. And that's when we learn that Poppy has a hidden corridor for servants' access leading out of her room, and it's one of the reasons she kept her room in this old part of the castle, because it's drafty and it's not modern and blah, 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 but...
Gives her freedom.
Exactly. So I just wrote, sneaky, sneaky. Tawny assumes that it's nightmares when Poppy tells her that she couldn't sleep, because apparently this is unfortunately a common occurrence for her. And so much so that healers have brewed this draft.
But normally it's called a sleeping draught.
That's what I thought too.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay.
Sleeping draft. A
brew.
Yeah.
That is essentially a sleep aid. Yeah. But the result of it is being completely knocked out. And this is something that makes Poppy very uncomfortable. Anyway, Tawny is so cool. She simply asks Poppy where she went and what she did, because she knows that Poppy snuck out, because this is something that they're in the habit of doing together. So Poppy tells her the truth. She went to the Red Pearl, which makes Tawny green with envy and peeved that Poppy didn't take her with her. She wants to know if she saw anyone she recognized, and Poppy deflects using the fact that most people wear masks as an excuse for not having recognized anyone. Poppy's mind now drifts to other thoughts about her life and of Hawke, and her gaze lands on her wardrobe where she describes the maiden's garb. So we already know that the maiden only wears white, but here we get a description about the white veil that she wears. It's a white veil with delicate gold chains made of this really, really light silk, but she used to feel that this veil would suffocate her. She found the garb of the maiden very suffocating.
Yeah, she talks about remembering its weight. I love the like double meaning in that. Because obviously
the symbolic weight.
Yeah, because obviously whatever this, because we still don't clearly know what a maiden fully is, but obviously it's a burden to her. It's something that she has to carry and doesn't want to carry. And since childhood, she's felt that way.
Exactly. So her whole closet is white, except for her dress for the upcoming rite, which is red. And we don't really know why, or we don't get any other detail, but we get from her description a sense that she absolutely despises everything that comes with being a maiden, but she's kind of like gotten used to it. And she's a little bit apathetic towards it all. Tawny changes the subject, getting up and noting that the mist hasn't come in a while. Then she really swerves and asks Poppy if she can speak honestly with her, and basically word vomits, quote, "I know our lives are different, as were our pasts and as our futures will be. But you treat the ascension as if it may very well be your death, when it's the exact opposite. It's life. It's a new beginning. It's a blessing. In a few months, you won't be dead, Poppy. You'll be alive and no longer bound by the rules. You'll be in the capital. You will experience something very few people do." So Tawny has definitely drank the Kool-Aid.
I think that is why I didn't think they were in the capital.
No, they're not in the capital. They're in Macedonia. The capital is Carcedonia. They will go to the capital for the ascension.
It's because the words sound the same to me.
They do. They do. They do. They're very similar names.
Okay.
Tawny is so enamored by the idea of becoming ascended that she's basically got a retort or a response to every single one of Poppy's concerns. And also seems to be under the impression that once they've ascended, once they've gone through this process, they're just going to pick up where they left off, and their life is just going to go back and and they're just going to have all the little shenanigans and everything's going to be totally fine. Which I'm just like, oh, Tawny, you naive little girl.
I mean, as far as we know, they don't really know what happens to the ascended.
Exactly.
They get whisked away, right? So.
Well, we do know a few things about the ascended, or actually, we don't know yet.
Her brother writes her letters, so she obviously has some communication there. But yeah, we don't know much. And
his personality seems to be the same. So it's not as though it's this massive transformation to who you are at the core. But at the same time, there isn't a lot of transparency over what it means to ascend or what Poppy's ascension will be like, because we know her ascension will be a little bit different. All she knows is that she hasn't been able to find anything about any prior maiden. And she's been told by the priestess in charge of her education that she shouldn't even question any of this. She should just have faith in the God's plan without knowledge of anything, basically, which I can understand. You're going through a process, we can assume, like the ascension is a event. It's a rite of passage. I don't even know how to describe it, but you know nothing about it. You're just excited about it because people on the other side of it.
They tell you to.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's very cultish.
It is very cultish. The chapter ends with Poppy decided to no longer risk Tawny's worthiness of an ascension by including her in their little
escapades.
Love that, yes. And then there's a knock at the door. It's Victor. They've been summoned. There is a cursed. Dimple count.
1.
1.
She mentions his dimples.
Yeah.
Question count?
13.
Okay, I have 12.
I wasn't sure if it was 12 or 13.
But I think if it's a person's name with a question mark, is that a question? Not really.
Not really.
So we're going to say we're not counting those?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I felt like I've never questioned what a question was until this.
You know what? We get to make the rules. It doesn't matter.
I know. I just want to make sure we're on the same page.
Yeah. Awards.
What is your most romantic?
Would you rather I wax poetic about how I'm charmed by your beauty, even though I can only see half your face, which, by the way, from what I can see, is pleasing? Would you rather I tell you I'm captivated by your eyes? They are a pretty shade of green from what I can tell. Well, no, I don't want you to lie. None of those things were a lie.
Very cute. It's funny because I took that as he was making fun of romance.
I think he was being facetious.
Yeah.
At first.
But then he says something sweet.
Yeah. What about you?
Have you been excited for me? Happy? She asked. Even though you're worried for yourself? I nodded. Of course. Then you've done what a friend does.
Oh, that's nice.
What's your funniest?
I don't have one.
I have one.
Okay.
If you ever go to the Red Pearl without me again, I will cut holes in the bottom of your shoes.
She's a feisty one.
Yeah. Do you have a spicy?
Yes. No, princess. I really want to see you when I do this without your gown between you and my mouth.
Same. Okay. Chapter 4. Victor and Poppy go to help the cursed man, to allow him to die with dignity before fully turning into a craven. We learn many more details about the craven and the poison they spread. But this man wasn't the only one attacked, and Poppy will have to act quickly before the poison spreads further. So, picking up where we left off, Victor and Poppy leave the castle immediately through the servants' access, which is her little secret passageway, and they spot a white handkerchief on a door of a home, which is like their beacon, which we talked about before is like the way of this group of people to communicate with each other. When Poppy was 15, she had followed Victor and learned what he took part in. He didn't want her to be part of this society, but she insisted because she doesn't agree with how the society deals with the cursed. Mm-hmm. She believes in giving people their dignity in death by killing them, basically.
Yeah, but Victor has trained her and taught her how to use her weapons and stuff. So she says, use me. I'm useful.
Absolutely. I mean, I totally agree with her wanting to take part in this,
For sure.
And also, as we see demonstrated in a minute, her power is super helpful as well, right?
Totally.
So a woman in her late 20s opens the door, and as the door opens, there is a rancid smell leaking out. It smells sour and sickeningly sweet scent of rot and decay, which is disgusting. Because I thought this book was about sexy vampires, and nothing about that is sexy. Poppy then uses her power to feel the woman's anguish, and, quote, she felt like someone who was dying but hadn't suffered a single injury or disease. That's how raw and potent her pain was.
I can only imagine.
I know. She's about to lose the love of her life.
I know.
And she basically just called forth his killers.
I know.
I know.
It's so sad.
It is. It is so sad. The lady is hesitant, but lets them in. All the while, Poppy is trying not to let the woman's grief overtake her, but it's just like completely painting the entire room. Poppy also notices a bloodstone blade on the mantle, which makes her think that either the woman was trying to deal with it herself or her husband was. But in the end, they just couldn't do it.
Yeah, because it's one of the side effects of the curse that your sense of self-preservation kind of takes over.
Yeah.
And you, even though you have every intention of killing yourself out of mercy for your future self and the people around you, you just can't.
Yeah. And I could also understand the wife just not being able to bring herself to do it.
Yeah, I could never do that to Justin.
When I was in school, I used to have reoccurring zombie dreams, like, all the time.
That's very bizarre.
I have really, really bad dreams, like really scary dreams. It's been a while, but they're really horrid. Anyway, and...
You're watching too many scary movies.
No, this was before. That's why I started watching scary movies.
And has it helped?
Yes.
Really?
Because scary movies are never as bad as my nightmares.
What is going on in that head of yours?
I don't know. I read up that zombie dreams are attributed to a feeling of loss of control and not being able to, just like control the situations you're in. But what I was going to say
We're getting such an insight into your psyche today.
I know. I'm feeling very Sherry today, I guess.
I love that.
But one of the things about these dreams that was the worst part is that I often came face to face with people I knew who had turned.
Okay.
And it was kill or be killed.
Yeah. And what'd you do?
Killed.
You killed.
Yeah.
Look at you.
It's the worst, though. So, it was like people that I loved in my life and cared a lot about.
For sure.
And it was the worst part because killing a random ass zombie is fine. But when you're faced with someone that you care about, it was the worst. But I haven't had a zombie dream since school, honestly. I don't know why.
Okay, so it's been a long time. It's been like 10 years.
Zombie dreams, yeah. I still get some really bad nightmares, though, sometimes.
I don't get scary nightmares. I get nightmares. The most reoccurring theme of my nightmares is a feeling of injustice.
Yeah, you've talked about that before, I think.
Yeah, but lately I've been having weird dreams.
But like weird
weird
fun or...
I don't know. Like, they're so different. There's no unifying thread. They're just so bizarre.
That's really funny.
And every single night, I'm not somebody that usually dreams.
Anyway, so the woman, Agnes, her husband was a huntsman for the Rise, and he's been gone for months, but has returned 2 days ago, and he started showing signs. And Victor is concerned that they waited to call for help until now, because we actually end up finding out that the window that we talked about before of when you're cursed, it's either you turn within hours or up to 3 days, but it never goes past that. So the fact that he's came home 2 days ago means like he's turning any minute, and they really waited till the last minute.
Which I can't really blame them for either.
Yeah, like wanting all the time they had together.
Oh,
but
so heartbreaking.
The thing is, though, is you don't know.
I know.
He could have turned earlier, too. It's a gamble, because he could have turned and, like, ate her face. I don't know.
Yeah.
Not that they eat faces, but maybe they do. I don't fully know yet. They seem worse than vampires, that's all. Then finally, Poppy actually speaks for the first time at this point, and the woman notices her and says, "It's you. They spoke of you. They say you're a child of the gods." And we learn that in Solace, the maiden is regarded as a child of the gods, even though she was born of humans, as far as we know. And then Poppy reaches out for Agnes's hand and thinks happy thoughts and is able to reduce the anguish that Agnes is feeling. And the whole room feels lighter, and she feels lighter, and she thanks her. And that's really lovely. That's a really nice side of her power. Because at the beginning, I was truly like, this is the worst power ever. How is this helpful? But this side of it is really lovely. Mm-hmm. And then Poppy notices a toy, meaning there must be a child around. But Agnes said there was no one else there. So I was kind of like, why? So Victor decides to remain with Agnes just in case. And Poppy goes to deal with the cursed man. She enters his bedroom, and the stench is undeniable. And she sees this young, sickly man lying in bed, and he is in insane pain, both physical and emotional, which I imagine everyone would be. And Poppy spots the wound. She describes it as 4 ragged tears in his skin, 2 side by side, and an inch or so above 2 identical wounds. He's been bitten. It seeps blood, and something darker, oilier. Faint reddish blue lines radiate out from the bite, spreading across his lower stomach and disappearing under the sheet. So
disgusting.
Yeah, it's pretty gross. So it's like poison is spreading through his body. Essentially, that's what's turning him. She also notices that his teeth are already changing. They're elongated, and his nails are also elongated because he's becoming Craven.
You make that sound so joyful.
I mean, I don't think it's good, but I'm glad to get the information. Therefore, it's joyful.
Got it.
Because we're leading up to this thing, and there's so many little nuggets even earlier, like from the beginning, that first line, obviously something is killing these people, and now we have a culprit. Mm-hmm. And she also explains in this moment that they have an insatiable need for blood. But then she says, quote, "If anyone were to survive his attack, they would become just like him. Well, not everyone. I hadn't." So in this moment, we learn that she was attacked by a Craven and survived and did not turn, which is not very common. So is this what
It's not that it's not very common. It's not common at all.
At all?
It's unheard of.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay. That wasn't clear. Is this why she's chosen? Is this what makes her chosen? Is that what the chosen word is?
Can't tell you.
Okay. Well, anyway, so we learned that the Craven are what live in the mist that is in the blood forest.
Yeah. So whenever the mist approaches, so when Tawny before in chapter 3 was saying, oh, like we haven't seen much of the mist lately. Basically, the mist is the precursor for a Craven attack.
Okay. And then we learn a little bit more about them. Quote, "The Craven were creations of the Atlanteans, the product of their poisonous kiss, which acted like an infection, turning innocent men, women, and children into starved creatures whose body and minds become twisted and decayed by ceaseless hunger." And we learn that they can be controlled, but only by the Dark One.
AKA Prince Castiel.
AKA Prince Castiel. Poppy then addresses the man, Marlowe, placing her hand on his chest and easing his pain as well. She's helping him through the process. She notices that his eyes are mostly still blue, but there are bolts of red shot through the irises, which is another sign of him changing. And she knows it's going to happen any minute now. He's kind of hallucinating and thinks that she is Rain, which is the god of common man and endings. So I guess it's like their god of death? Question mark?
No.
Okay. Then what is endings if not death?
There's a god of death, that's why.
Okay. Then Poppy actually removes her mask, revealing her scars on her face that were caused by Craven, which is why she didn't want to take it off in front of Hawke. And she also mentions in this moment that the Duke always says such a shame about her face, which is just another reason why this guy gives me the ick, and we haven't even met him yet.
He sucks.
He sounds like the worst.
Yeah,
like,
he's the worst.
Nothing about him. She then reveals that she's the maiden, and there's like a quote tied to it saying, "Born in the shroud of gods, protected even inside the womb, veiled from birth." So
It's a prophecy.
yeah. I just was wondering what the protected even inside the womb meant. When did her mom die?
You will find out shortly.
Anyway, the man realizes that she's there to kill him with dignity because normally people are dragged and burned alive. And she confirms that the man was ready to die. He said goodbye to his wife. She takes her bloodstone dagger and shoves it up the back of his head into his brain.
Yeah, it severs his spine.
Yeah. Which is gross, but gives him a peaceful death.
And a quick death, most importantly.
Death. Yeah. But right before he dies, he says he wasn't the only one. There were other members of his party who were bitten. So she's like, what? And he tells her that there's another guy a couple houses down or a couple streets over. So she has to go deal with that as well because, again, timeline-wise, that 3 days is more or less up. So he could have already turned a ton of other people. This is a really bad situation.
Absolutely.
And that is where we end.
So, what did you think?
That was great.
Yeah.
Yes. It took chapter 4 for me to be like super excited.
Okay, so now you're in. Mm-hmm. Okay, good.
Yeah.
I feel a bit of relief now.
Yeah, it was just a bit of a rocky start. But yeah, no, that chapter I was like, oh, what are we getting into? This is cool.
Yeah, I will say, I mean, it's obviously very different because I binged it on the beach, but I don't know if it took me about 30% of the way, maybe a little bit more, to be like, oh, I really like this book. I was intrigued. For a long time, I was like, this is interesting. This world is interesting. These characters are interesting. Don't really know what's going on. I want to know more. But it was very, like, there was no urgency to this emotion. There was no desire to just gobble up the book, which I felt with other books I've read. But then you reach this point where you're like, oh, okay. I need to read this entire series very, very quickly, which I restrained myself from doing. I dragged it out for a good 5 months.
Which is big for you.
You know what? It was an exercise in self-control.
And you passed.
Yes. I'm very proud of myself.
Dimple count?
0.
Yeah. Question count?
I have 2.
I have 5.
Really?
How do I have 5 and you have 2?
I don't know.
Oh, man. I feel like our numbers are going to be so off.
Should we fact check?
I guess.
That's a really big difference. If it's a 1 question difference.
Yeah. All right. We settled on 3. There was one that was a person's name with a question mark that we dismissed, and
that's it.
That's it, as far as we could find. But if anyone is counting along and we say something wrong, please tell us.
Yeah, for sure. Comment on the clip or message us something. Yeah.
Okay. So already 4 chapters in, we have 33 questions and 4 dimples.
Love that.
And 1 reading comprehension blunder on my part.
Now we're going to actually be able to tell whose reading comprehension is better.
Yeah.
I am harsh on myself.
Yeah.
I actively own my lack of reading comprehension. But you know what? Maybe you're secretly.
Maybe. I can admit when I'm wrong.
No, totally.
All right.
I have no awards for this chapter.
Oh, right. Awards. I put romantic as Poppy's gift in easing their pain. But that was the only one I had. Because, it was not a funny and it wasn't a spicy.
No, there was nothing great award worthy.
No, it was just doom and gloom.
Yeah, it was a little bit sad. But it imparted a lot of knowledge in terms of the world and the characters and their personalities.
I agree.
Well, even actually, we didn't even talk about this, but when Poppy uses her gift on Agnes, she says that Victor notices and that she was going to hear about it later. So it's another little glimpse into their relationship.
Yeah. I actually was wondering why he wouldn't want that. But anyway.
Well, what it does is they know she's the maiden. And so it allows more people to know about her gift.
Oh, I thought it was known. I thought it was common knowledge that the maiden had a gift.
Whispers. Yeah.
Alrighty then.
Besties, for next week, please read chapters 5 through 8 of From Blood and Ash. Thank you so much for listening to episode 1 of season 3. Please rate this podcast and leave a review. It'll help other people find us. If you haven't already, we encourage you to set new episodes to download so you can be sure to be up to date. And if you're interested in supporting our podcast, we've got our Amazon storefront as a great place to buy little bits and bobs that obviously helps us out, as well as our code with Smoke Show. You can follow us on Instagram at Book Bound Pod and on TikTok at Book Bound Besties. Please tag us, but warn us in anything from Blood and Ash related. Feel free to tag us in anything Empyrean related. Elyse is now completely up to date.
Yeah, we're still happy to talk about it. Just because we're done covering it doesn't mean it's over.
Exactly. And please share that you're listening to this episode to your stories, because like I said before, since there isn't really a podcast that covers From Blood and Ash the way we're doing, odds are people are going to be interested in hearing about this. So hopefully. We'd love to expand our bestie community. And as always, if you have any questions, comments, or feedback, you can email us at bookboundpod@gmail.com. Let's get to reading. Exactly. And please share that you're listening to this episode to your stories because, like I said before, since there isn't really a podcast that covers From Blood and Ash the way we're doing, odds are people are going to be interested in hearing about this. So hopefully. We'd love to expand our bestie community. And as always, if you have any questions, comments, or feedback, you can email us at bookboundpod@gmail.com. Let's get to reading.